Rise and shine, ladies. You're tuned in to Skirts Up with Samantha and Melissa.
We got your daily dose of hope and humor while we discuss everything from failing to succeeding
and all the spiciness in between.
Hey, Skirts Up Squad. It is your girl, Samantha, and I am excited to pop on here because we got some exciting news that I must share with you. Have you heard? We are going to be live at Slow Pour Brewing on September 15th. We are going to be in front of a live audience in real life time, where we're going to be talking about what it is that we're doing, what our future goals are, and what our big Christmas project is. And I am so excited to share that with you because it's going to be a challenging project to complete, but it's going to be doable and it's going to be hugely impactful. And we cannot wait to do that and be a part of it with you guys. So if you can't be there in person at Slow Pour Brewing in Lawrenceville, Georgia on September 15th, we will be live, Facebook Live. So you can also follow along there. If you can't make it at that time, you can catch it when you can. It'll be from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So we're very excited. On a separate note, we had gotten some feedback from a dear friend and listener to our show that there was a specific episode that had helped her get the help that she needed. And that just really touched us and it gave us goosebumps. And we thought, oh my gosh, if there's one, there's more. So what we wanted to do is give you a little bit of an encore episode where we take the chunk where Melissa Walker, yes, it's the episode with Melissa Walker, where she walks us through how trauma turns complex and how you can find the best therapist, whether you're on a budget, whatever the excuse is, how you can find the best therapist for you and why you should. So enjoy this little blast from the past with Melissa Walker. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you in September.
When I tell you people love to minimize their trauma, people love to minimize their trauma.
Yeah. I don't know why we like to tell ourselves. I guess you just always want to think like, oh, they have it worse than me. Or
yeah, people are like, well, I wasn't sex trafficked, so it wasn't that bad. Well, just because you weren't sex trafficked doesn't mean it wasn't that. Let me explain how the brain puts things in memory, because the brain has two different ways of recording memories. So most memories, so probably doing today's podcast, listening to today's podcast, I hope nobody's going to be traumatized by this. So hopefully the memory of this podcast is going to go in the big filing cabinet with all the millions of emotion neutral and emotion positive memories. And I mean, most of that stuff we even, we forget about it, or we can pull it out if we need to. And we're like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happened. And it's very neutral, sometimes positive. If it's positive, we might think of it a little bit more. If it's emotion neutral, then we might never think of it again. So that's where the vast majority of our memories go. But trauma memories, if you think if I had so you guys can see, the listeners won't be able to see, but I have this little filing box right here. See it? Mm-hmm. I'm making sounds so the people hear that I have this little. So this is our trauma file, and it sits right here in front of me all the time. Pretend that it's got sirens and flashing lights and police tape, and you pretend you can see the odor of like on Scooby-Doo when something smells really bad and there's that wafting up from it. Imagine it's got sirens, it's got lights, it's got police tape. And so these trauma memories, including when you peed your pants, and also, when your parents didn't come to your Little League playoffs or whatever. I don't know if Little League playoffs are a thing. You know what I mean? All of those trauma memories are in here. And we are all the time either preoccupied with going through this folder and being like, oh my gosh, I have to make sure I don't pee my pants. I have to make sure, oh my gosh. Or we've got it locked up tight, put the padlock on it, and we are in denial about it. And we're like, nope, it's not here. It doesn't exist. I'm not looking at it. You're not looking at it. None of us are looking at it. and I'm putting a ton of energy that I'm probably not even aware of into not looking at. So
Interesting.
Oh, so it's like when you're in a restaurant and you have high anxiety, and I do this all the time. My husband laughs at me, and I'm like, all right, I gotta pee. Oh my God, okay, I'm about to have to walk past all these people. They're gonna be looking at me. And so
Mhm.
then I go pee, and then I come back and I sit back down, and then an hour later I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna see me go pee again.
Oh,
my God,
no.
okay, no, I'll just wait. Or I'll make him stop at a gas station. And then I'm like, nope, they're not gonna be looking at me. And then I just like stare down and I walk real fast.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
a
you're
very
putting a
good
lot of
example
energy
of
into
two-
it.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. The other thing is if I am unaware, like, so Melissa was unaware that she had a peed her pants in kindergarten memory in this box until we were talking today. So even though she's not aware that it's in there, and probably not aware, I mean, I know you're aware of some of your stuff that's in there, but not everything. Nevertheless,
Yeah.
it's always right here, and it's always informing us. It's like, I call it our trauma glasses. So like, I can't take my trauma glasses off, right? So I'm always looking through this perspective that's being informed by everything in this box. And so that makes me nervous to walk across the restaurant to go to the bathroom for a second time, or it makes me nervous to get in a car if I had a car accident that maybe I don't even remember or ever think about, or it makes me nervous to be around men if I have unresolved dad issues, or it makes me nervous to be around men if I have
Interesting.
unresolved sexual trauma issues, right? Like, so all of that stuff, and you're like, well, I don't know why that person makes me nervous. Well, the answer can be found in this box. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but to Melissa's situation, like, I guess I don't understand why that would be in the trauma box. Like, what in your daily life would pinpoint to, oh, it's because I peed my pants in?
Not a clue.
Like, like, I think, but what if it's just a memory because you said, have you ever peed your pants in school? Like, oh, yeah, I have.
So here's why I know that it's in that box. So today, like, you're going through your day and your brain is recording so much information about today. Not all of it can possibly go into that memory file. I wasn't going to talk about this, but this answers your question. So tonight when you sleep and you're in your REM sleep, your brain is going to compress the file, just like a computer compresses a file and
Oh.
goes from being like a
Mhm.
bajillion gigabits or whatever, I don't know computers, to being like a smaller amount of information. And so it throws out a lot of things, right? It throws out a lot of stuff that your brain deems as unimportant to remember. And it only keeps the stuff that is important to remember and puts that on the shelf. The chair that she was sitting in that day and what she was wearing, like, Melissa, can you remember what you were wearing any other day of kindergarten except maybe the day that you had picture day and you still have that picture? Like, do you remember what you were wearing
Oh.
any other day?
No, actually. No.
Right.
I remember
You
other
had, like,
memories.
Yeah.
Like, I have a couple memories in kindergarten of, like, being able to read, and then the people around me couldn't. But I don't remember the sitting in the moment of it.
Right. You don't remember sitting in the moment of it. You probably don't remember what you were wearing. Right. And so
Yeah.
when a memory is recorded as a trauma, it like becomes slow motion. Your brain records all those details, like, actually in excess. You remember the smells,
Okay.
you remember the sound, you remember the emotions, you remember what you were wearing, you remember what the chair looked like, you remember all those things.
I remember the
Now,
paper
I'm not
bag that my parents brought me new clothes back in.
like, do you remember any other paper bags, like, that your lunches came in?
No.
No.
Okay, but I do.
Okay.
I'm going to stop challenging this, I promise. But I'm going to challenge it one more time. That is how my
Okay.
brain operates. So, like, when I worked in an animal hospital, me and only me, for some reason, like, they could say, when did that pet, and I can't remember its name, come in? And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, I was wearing my pink scrubs, so it must have been Wednesday, and I know it was Wednesday because so-and-so was here, because they were standing here when I was standing here, and that pet's name was Fluffy because I remember singing this song in my head, like, when I was touching it, and I can, like, literally, like, I remember stupid stuff like this. Like, so how would I know, like, what's a trauma and, like, what's not a trauma if my
Ooh.
brain works like that?
Good question.
So your brain still can't hold on to, like, can you remember that from kindergarten or just from like last week?
Oh, no. I mean, this is like 5 years
And
ago. I'm, from working.
So I don't know you very well, Sam. And I don't know what your history is, and I don't want to out you on anything, but I'm going to hazard a guess that you've got a little hypervigilance going on, and that for you to feel safe, you need to be hyper aware of your surroundings and details at all times, because there's a part of you that thinks that if it drops the ball on any of that, you're going to experience a danger of some kind.
Oh
Okay,
So
my
I'm going to
goodness.
validate what you just said, because now it's coming full circle. In my therapy, with all of my problems that I've had going on that I won't go into, it's come to the fact that she says that I'm in a constant state of living in fight or flight.
Yeah.
That I have
Is
not
that
been
PTSD?
that I've not been out of it in some time.
I don't have a license to work in Georgia. I don't have consent from Sam. I cannot diagnose Sam. I can say that hypervigilance is a symptom of PTSD,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
can't.
That's just really funny that
can't-
coincides with what I just learned.
That's interesting.
Okay, continue.
I
Sorry.
literally thought,
No,
Melissa, ooh, Melissa's going to be stumped with this question.
I thought so too, but
But Sam, I want to say hypervigilance isn't really a part of your personality. It's one of the ways that you've learned to cope with the shit that's happened to you.
Okay.
okay. Good to know. Sorry, I keep challenging you.
No, that's interesting. I loved that whole
Like,
exchange.
Yeah, no, that was good.
Handle it. Challenge me. Sam, when you and I were talking the other day, I was saying that when I first started out as a baby therapist, I thought I was specializing in depression and anxiety, because I was like, I know depression and anxiety. Everybody has depression and anxiety. It's depression and anxiety. And what I came to realize in my clients and in myself is what, generally speaking, I'm not making a 100% blanket statement, but generally speaking, what we tend to perceive as depression and anxiety is really because of the shit that's happened to us that we haven't known how to deal with. And usually it's not impersonal stuff like earthquakes and car accidents. It's usually the personal stuff. It's usually, more often than not, attachment trauma. And so in my practice and in myself, I kind of see everything through the lens as attachment trauma. And so when people tell me they have a little bit of anxiety, but they don't have complex trauma,
Call
that they're telling
bullshit.
me I don't call bullshit when they say it to me, but I ask a few more questions, and then they become a client, and then I take their history, and then I'm like, so we are really looking at attachment trauma here. And not everyone has attachment trauma. Like any diagnosis you want to pick, it's what shit happened to you and how have you not been able to deal with it successfully. Therefore, you have depression, anxiety, or blah, 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 blah. Does that make sense? So all of this has been leading up to my 7 dimensions that influence the effect of trauma. And I would like to say, so all of these 7 dimensions have research on them. They're like lenses. So let's talk about the 7 dimensions. And I do want to put out there that if anybody is listening and they are a PhD student and they want to do their dissertation to validate my model, I would love to have somebody validate my model. It is not validated. I'm not going to do the research to validate it. It is, however, my intellectual property, so nobody be stealing it. Like, this is my intellectual property. But if somebody wants to collaborate with me to validate it, like, shoot me up? No, hit me up. Hit me up. Send me an email if you would like to collaborate on researching and validating this. Otherwise, don't steal it. It's my intellectual property. Okay. So all of the numbers that we're going to use are completely made up. Like, whose line is it anyway? Like, these numbers are just completely made up. But as I was telling you guys before, people love to tell me it wasn't that bad. It's in the past. It happened 30 years ago. It shouldn't matter anymore. It wasn't that big of a deal. Like, why can't I just get over it? People love to minimize their both big T and small t traumas to me, especially neglect. But even like big T traumas, they're like, but it happened so long ago. Why does it matter? Well, this is why it matters. I'm going to like show you with numbers why it matters, even though these numbers are kind of made up numbers. Okay. So all of our options of numbers go from 1 to 100, then we're going to add them up. And it can go both ways. Like I had somebody with a specific big T trauma, and she told me, and I questioned her a lot. Like we actually went through all 7 things because I didn't believe her that it hadn't affected her badly. But no, when we went through the 7 things, it ended up being a very small number for her. And I was like, you're right, that didn't traumatize you. So on my 7 dimensions, the first dimension is the quote unquote objective quantity and quality of the bad experience. So we're going to use the first grader who peed their pants. Objectively, that is not a huge number. That is not a 100. They weren't sex trafficked. They weren't in Auschwitz, right? Like we're going to, for the sake of argument, we're going to call it maybe a 30. And then just to understand that these things can happen more than once, let's just say a week or a month later, same first grader pees their pants in front of their first grade class again. That second one's probably going to feel bigger because it's now compounded. And so we're going to give that second one a 50. All right. So we add together 30 plus 50 equals 80. 80 is starting to be a big number now. Okay. Number 2, how sensitive the person is. So there is a really good book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. Highly recommend you read it.
I'm an HSP.
Yes. We're all HSPs then. So for anybody listening, HSP, highly sensitive person, is not a diagnosis, but it is a thing, right? Like you can just look around and notice that some people are a lot more sensitive than other people are, right? Like some people can, like my husband, not nearly as sensitive. And then there's the rest of our family who like has a meltdown if we run out of milk. So highly sensitive people are going to feel things bigger than not highly sensitive.
Or if the toilet paper is put on the roll wrong.
Yes. Put it on right.
Okay, so we're going to say that this little child in first grade is on that like 1 to 100 scale of being sensitive, which again, made up numbers, these aren't real numbers, is a 60. So now we have our 30 for the first incident, 50 for the second incident, plus 60 for being highly sensitive. Now we're up to 140. Okay. Next, that child is going to make meanings of what happened. And some meanings that she might make of peeing her pants is, I'm not safe at school, or I'm stupid, or both. We're going to say she makes both meanings. And I will say highly sensitive people tend to make worse meanings than not highly sensitive people. So like someone like my husband would be like, oh, that's a thing that happened. Okay. Whereas a highly sensitive person who's like in the 90 to 100 range would be like, oh, we're out of milk. It's the end of the world, right? Like, so those numbers are going to be bigger for the highly sensitive person. Okay, so now adding up our numbers, we're at 240. Remember, we started with a 30, that first peeing the pants incident, only a 30 on our quote unquote objective scale. Now we're up to 240. Okay, number 4, what impact does this experience have on the person's life? Both positive and negative. But for our argument, we're just going to go with the positives. So this kid now, I'm just going to say, being a sensitive kid, peed their pants twice in front of the class, they're probably getting bullied at school. We're probably starting to see a little bit of social anxiety in this child. So I'm going to give that a 100 because now we have something that's actually like reaching the diagnosable stage, even though I don't really love the whole diagnostic process. But now it's not just about peeing. Now it's maybe about walking through the restaurant, right? And people are going to notice I'm going to the bathroom twice, right? Like, so now we have anxiety around using the bathroom, being in public, people looking at us because this event happened. So I'm adding another 100. So now we're up to 340. So additional influencing factors are personal beliefs and values, including perfectionism. So this being a very sensitive child, I'm sure her value was not to appear super vulnerable and make a mistake in front of her whole first grade class. So we're going to add 40 for that. Cultural norms. First grade classrooms, children don't look kindly upon a first grader peeing their pants. So we're going to add another 40 for that. And then let's say that the parent has to leave work and go get the kids a change of clothes, and maybe they don't handle it very well, and so they kind of they feel irritated that this happened, and maybe they don't even mean to shame the kid, but the kid feels the parent's irritation and feels kind of shamed by the parent. And so we're going to add another 50 for that. So now we're up to 470. Okay. Individual agency at the time of the event. This has a lot to do with what Peter Levine said about if you are able to fight, flight, or freeze adequately, then it doesn't really become a trauma. But this kid is just like standing in front of the room with everybody knowing that she peed her pants. She has no agency there. Her face is turning red. You know, there's no agency there. We're going to add another 50. So now we're up to 520. Okay, and then how has the perception of the event changed over time, and how has it interrelated with other experiences? So I'm going to say, just for the sake of our story, oh, Melissa, I thought of this last night, not knowing that you had this experience. But I think
It's okay.
maybe both of us have at some. So this did not happen to me. Nevertheless,
did you pee your pants?
Going by no, it didn't. But I was called Pissy Missy a couple of times as a child. Were you
Me too.
Missy?
Are you
Me
serious?
too. Oh, I hated it.
So I'm just going to say that for the sake of our little made-up, that now this poor kid is in 6th grade. She's got social anxiety, and the bullies are, 5 years later, still calling her Pissy Missy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's maybe remembered in yearbooks as Pissy Missy. So I'm adding another 100 for how the perception has changed and interrelated with other experience. So our little piece in front of the classroom and only getting an objective score of 30 at the beginning has now become 620. Yeah, so that thing that is little and people want to minimize and tell me isn't really a big deal and they shouldn't have PTSD from it. No. Let's add this up. When we go through all these dimensions that affect how these things are experienced in our bodies, we are now up to 620.
It's really making me feel like, how many times in my past have I judged somebody and they should just get over it? But I have no idea what the other factors were that played into whatever it is that's making them hold on to. Yeah, interesting. You can't really compare people's trauma, can you?
Nope. I mean, literally, I've had people who will have something that sounds objectively terrible to you, and maybe it's not to them. Legitimately, I will go through this list, and it really is okay, clearly that wasn't a trauma to you. And then I've had people who were so highly sensitive that something that, literally, their mom moved their collectibles to dust right there and didn't put the collectibles back in the right way. And they really made the meaning of it that my mom doesn't love me, my mom doesn't care about me, my mom doesn't respect me. And they really felt traumatized by that. And I mean, I kind of feel like it's even a little bit hard for me to call that a small T trauma because your mom dusted for you. But to them, from their experience, it was a very big deal. And you can't tell them that that's not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? If you can't afford a therapist, first of all, you might be able to afford a therapist. Students, master's students, all have to do 300 hours before they can graduate. So if you have a university near you or in your state even, because now everything's online, you might be able to get in for free or very low cost, meaning $5, $10, $15 with a student therapist. Now they are going to be a student, but the thing about students is that they try really hard. So they haven't read 300 books, but they're trying really, really, really hard. So,
yeah,
that is a thing. If you meet the qualifications, your county or your state may have therapy that's available to you going through the county or state. Sometimes those can be really hard to get into, and those also tend to be people who have graduated but are not fully licensed yet, because you've got to do 2 or 3 years before you can get your full license. So they're probably still baby therapists. Those people are oftentimes not trained in EMDR and IFS because those are kind of advanced trainings that cost more money and take more time. But sometimes you might get lucky. Also, I think it's worth a shot to call around. I'm going to tell you how to find a therapist online. Sometimes you can get lucky. A lot of private practice therapists will do a certain amount of pro bono. Not all do. I personally do. I try to have about 20% of my work be pro bono. I'm not taking any pro bono
Wow.
at this time, but I try to have 20% of my work be pro bono. So it's sometimes worth it if you find like your perfect therapist online and you're like, hey, you could send them an email and say, hey, I don't know if you ever do any pro bono work. If you're not taking any right now, can I get on your wait list? Because if you find the person, you're like, oh my gosh, I think this person is just really speaking to me, just ask them. And if they tell you no, they tell you no.
Okay.
But it's worth asking, I
Good to know.
think. If you don't want to do the therapy thing, I'm a book reader and I've got a million books I could recommend, but there are also some really good podcasts by some really good therapists. One that I would give a shout out to is the holistic psychologist. She is a licensed psychologist and she no longer does private practice. Her whole thing is online. She's got books, I think she's got podcasts, she's got an Instagram, she's on Facebook. I think they're like classes. Like I've been getting social media stuff from her advertising for her next like class to sign up for. So, and
Yeah.
her hashtag is self-healers. And her material is good. It is high quality, good material for people that want to do that journey themselves and not, you could have a
Neat.
therapist and do her stuff as well. But I do highly recommend her books. So let me tell you how to find a good therapist. First of all, let me say BetterHelp is a really unethical company. Please don't use BetterHelp. So Psychology Today is like the main online thing. There are other ones, but like most therapists have a profile on Psychology Today. And it's very user friendly in that you can search by anything you want to search by. You can search by your insurance. You can search by what specialty you're looking for. You can search by what age you are, because you don't want to get a child therapist if you're an adult, vice versa. You can search by if you want your therapist to be a specific gender or a specific religion, or they can put on there if they're part of the LGBT community. So if you specifically want an LGBT therapist, you can get that. Or if you specifically want a Catholic or a Muslim therapist, you can search by that. You can search by what their specialties are. And you can also search by what modalities they use. So if you specifically want an internal family systems therapist, you can go on there and search. And if you specifically want an EMDR therapist, you can go on there and search. And if you're like, I specifically want a female therapist who takes my insurance and is trained in EMDR and specializes in trauma, you can search by all of that.
Connect with us on Facebook or Instagram to stay up to date on future episodes.
If you liked what you heard today, hit subscribe now.